a great song. Great way to start the morning.
You'd be singing some country tunes.
That's right.
Nashville.
Yeah, Nashville was fun. Glad you brought that up. It was great. Really cool. Got to spend it's today, Friday, Wednesday evening at the Country Music Hall of Fame, which was worth going back to and doing all the whole tours and stuff. I had an opportunity this week to be Monday evening for an event, and all day Tuesday and Wednesday, and back yesterday after a few days with our folks from Infor, the great folks that do ERP and warehouse management and all kinds of other technology for distribution and manufacturing. They had their annual TUG event, they call it, the users group, and a wonderful third-party group that helps them with that as well. Got to meet with some of the executives from that group, but fantastic event, super well run. Friends Daniel Mangan and Steve Levy and James Mumford that some have been on the event. They put together a series of great meetings for me. In fact, I think you just got a picture up there. So we're with our buddy Dirk Beveridge. Scott Wagner is there second from the left, and Scott's with NAED and an industry influencer, which is what this discussion level was. I don't think if I ever had used that term around any of my kids, they would think that that's the case. But we got together, myself and Scott and Dirk, and I got to meet with Kevin Samuelson and Maury Cross and Rick Ryder that are in that picture, who are some of the senior most executives, including Kevin being the CEO of Infor and Maury the chief customer officer, and Kevin leading their AI initiative, or Rick leading their AI initiatives and so forth. And just a great group of people. And we talked about things like, platforms and AI and AI slop and a lot of the stuff that we talk about here, and some of the challenges that wholesale distribution is having and what customers are facing. Maury and I had a couple of great bit of time together talking about that. And so it was great to be with those executives and see the direction that Infor is going, which is a lot of it is in parallel with thinking. I wish we were a fraction of their size at LeadSmart, but the thinking is so in alignment with the importance of extendability with software and technology and platforms versus point products, and managing your data, protecting your data. So it's really good. Great pick here of our friend Dan Schuberth from the National Association of Wholesalers and Distributors. Dan is going to join us for our 200th episode coming up, it looks like. And Dan showed a whole new side of himself. Got to see him up live with a karaoke band, not just karaoke, but band. And then Daniel Mangan there doing his best country western, George Strait, all in black there, I guess Johnny Cash. So that was really fun. But the other piece that I was back there for is they gave me the opportunity to lead a panel. So not a great picture here, but not too bad. And so I had an opportunity to join some great folks from Turtle, the large electrical distributor, and McNaught and McKay, and then Scott Wagner again from NAED. And this was a co-sponsored event between NAED and Infor. We did it on the stage at the sports bar at the Omni Hotel in Nashville. And it was really cool because it was live cast. There was a big group of people there. And then it was live cast to, I think he said between 800 and 1,000 people had logged into that live. And we talked about, it was really cool discussion. We talked about the buy side of distribution and the levers that they can pull to really impact business and business growth and margins and so forth, and how that's actually with technology has been changing more and more. So great few days. Just love the folks at Infor, just a great partner. They're with us regularly on the show, with Steve having been with us. We've got more from their executive team joining us. So shout out to everybody there. Thanks for the invitation, the hospitality, and the thoughtful conversation. So I can't even start with a number of conversations I had with people there that was just really enjoyable. If you are connected with me or follow me on LinkedIn, I put 3 big posts up yesterday about my takeaways on the event and a lot more fun pictures as well. So it's good. It's good. So man, it feels good to be home.
You were just gone a couple of days. It wasn't like you're gone a long time.
Well, man, I'm old. I'm old. I had a beautiful hotel room. I was in a great hotel, great people. Everything was just well orchestrated. No travel hiccups, even based upon the weathers that were going on and so forth. It just turned out to be a good event in general. So glad I was there. Are you saying that I should should not be whining about the travel.
I think you need to tough it up a bit. That's what I think you need.
I'm going to just reserve all comments on that. Okay. I will toughen up a little bit. We're going to get to the second half of the year and I'm going to be going nonstop. And so that's good. So should we dive in and do a show today?
Let's do it.
Yeah, good. Well, I'm Kevin Brown. I'm here with my lifelong friend, business partner, and co-founder and co-host of our show here around the horn at Wholesale Distribution. We get together every Friday, unless somebody's on an airplane, in a hospital, or on a planned vacation, and we even do it sometimes from planned vacations. And we discuss the news of the week and how it impacts wholesale distribution and manufacturing. And we talk about things like what's going on in the economy and supply chain and how that's impacting distributors and manufacturers. And we look at what's going on in M&A and sales and marketing and technology and robotics and, of course, artificial intelligence. And we try to talk a little bit about leadership and people within a business. And we try and pull all those things from the news and tie them back into how that impacts our audience and wholesale distributors and manufacturers. So again, we do this every week, and we do that by means of the newsletter that we send out. We send out a newsletter, again, same title, Around the Horn in Wholesale Distribution and Manufacturing. Goes out to tens of thousands of people. We would love it if you would like to get that too. We'd be happy to share that with you. If you don't get it and you would like to, please just let us know. You can get that at simply by sending us an email at hello@leadsmarttech.com. Additionally, you could just follow LeadSmart on LinkedIn. You'll see the updates to that. And there's also, if you're looking at the LeadSmart Technologies page, on the far left side of that page, you will see a banner, and that banner will say newsletter. You can click on the newsletter and subscribe to it right there. And you can also just search for the newsletter on LinkedIn. So you could also go to our website for the show, which is www.aroundthehornpod.com. and sign up there. But if you happen to be listening on Apple or Spotify or Odyssey or Amazon or any of the podcast formats, please hit the subscribe button, leave a review from there. You won't be seeing these two handsome faces, nor will you be seeing the newsletter that will be up on the screen in front of us. So you can go back anytime you'd like and catch us on YouTube and or Facebook Live or LinkedIn Live and see the live recorded episodes there. But happy to have you with us, and we're looking forward to the show and some good comments hopefully coming in for some of our friends that join us live here as well. We've got handful of folks with us. Hey, look, there's our good friend Mark Gillum from Enable that'll be with us on the show here in the next few weeks, and Bob's with us, and got quite a few other people joining and coming in with us as well. So we look forward to comments that are with us today. And let's dive in, Tom. Maybe start with something that's not necessarily on the newsletter. You don't even need to throw it up yet. Kevin Warsh is being sworn in as we speak as the new Fed chair. So what are your thoughts on him coming in and how that's going to impact the economy?
Well, we talked a lot about this last week on the show. Honestly, I don't think anything's going to change much soon, right? I don't think there's going to be an immediate shifts, but I do think we will see, again, this whole Iran war situation, which again seems to continue to be at a stalemate. I just was doing some more homework this morning. There's not a lot of movement. In fact, if it wasn't for the Pakistani president and the Pakistani leadership, I'm not sure anything would be getting done on the whole thing. The one thing, not to go completely off topic, but I didn't realize that this Strait of Hormuz has been a problem for many, many years. This isn't just like something that's, I mean, how many people ever heard of the Strait of Hormuz before this war, right? This wasn't a household name. And supposedly this has been an issue for a while, and Iran has constantly been trying to move out their borders to the strait's only 21 miles wide. So it's like from here to Catalina Island, if you put it that, from where we are, or the Channel Islands where I am. And so it's not a very far distance really. And so they've been outreaching and putting their zone, I guess you'd call it, or their territory zone farther. They've been trying to have control. The U.S. has constantly been having naval presence in there. I mean, there's been a whole drama in the Strait of Hormuz going on for many, many years that no one ever talked about, right? And until now. And now they're really trying to figure out how to exploit that going forward as part of these negotiations, which is also causing. So just, man, the stories behind the stories here, I think, are just remarkable as you start to peel the onion.
Well, if you stop and think about it, in fact, I've got an article I'll include next week, ran out of room this week, but it talks about the choke points within supply chain around the world. And the three biggest ones are Strait of Hormuz, Panama Canal, and the Suez Canal.
Mhm.
And when you get those pieces, any of those, and you've got two there in the Middle East that have major impact from I'll say a geopolitical standpoint. You've got less pressure from a geopolitical standpoint with the Panama Canal, but you have issues that can come up with that regarding, as we saw early last year, with having a lower level of water from a drought in the lake that feeds into before you get to the other side of that. There's lower levels of water were in the Panama Canal, so fewer ships could get through, which was slowing down the entire supply chain. So there's a series of choke points globally that we probably don't think about until there's a problem, right? And then now you've got this, you're talking about the Strait of Hormuz, and it's certainly something that we should all know something about if we went to our geography classes at some point. But it is a major choke point that is impacted by a very volatile government, and that is a component of what the U.S. is trying to do in this setting, is get out.
Yeah, and if you look at this, right? So this is the strait here.
Still not why it's not know it's why it's called not called the elbow or the knee.
Yeah, let me refresh it because I don't know. But so this distance here is the 21 miles, right? Or between here and here is 21 miles.
So for those of you that are listening and not watching, Tom has a map. It's a live map that's up on his screen that's showing ships transiting or wanting to transit the Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah. So what Iran is saying is that they've got over half of it, right? And then on this side, they're claiming, well, we have the other half here. So there's trying to take ownership basically of this area. And then the most recent proposal I understand from Iran is, well, we want to have kind of a toll type of thing, but we'll give preference to Chinese and Russian ships going through here versus other ships that are there. I mean, anyway, I guess there's two things that hit me. One is, how do all of these countries, all of these wealthy countries and all these oil things, how did this happen? Right? How did we let this happen? Number one, and number two. And secondly, did we realize as we invaded Iran and started this war, how this was going to factor into all of this? Right? I can't imagine we didn't. I mean,
absolutely. No,
but I don't think we did to the degree. And I think there must have been something, we'll just be able to, handle that and brush that aside. There's just a lot more going on here, it appears, than, hey, we're blocking the strait because of this conflict.
Yep. Well, I think there's another story behind a story there that you're describing. I think what probably came out of this was the two components. One, that the initial bombing that was going on within Iran, and their expectation was that they would capitulate quicker than they did, right? And then there was probably the human interest component of that and human life component of that says if we take the country out and go too far with it, there's a likelihood they may even not only just attack their neighbors, but they may do some things to completely shut down production. And this is and we have a few articles ahead that we'll talk about this more, but this is so much more than just oil, right?
Yeah.
It's all of the other commodities that are coming out of there, between helium and the fertilizer components and nitrates and so forth, that are really impacting, and they're impacting Asia and Europe far more than they have an impact here, but there's an impact here as well. And so I think and I was listening to one of the podcasts that we both like a lot and talk about here last week on the All In podcast. What they were talking about in that setting as well was that, it is becoming more and more apparent that there needs to be some likelihood of there's going to be more bombing and more attacks going on to get to the bottom of this, because right now, obviously it looks like, and this is not a political show, this is a business show, but right now from the look of things is really the issue, I guess, behind this is they are ready to stand by and drag this out and throw some bombs at neighboring countries and keep control of the Suez Canal. and at the same time watch the rest of the world kind of go through a squeeze because of the oil. And they watch the news just like anybody else, right? Our current president in the U.S. has never had a lower approval rating. People don't like the high costs here. There's pressure to get out of the war, and they're prepared to wait because there's a little different view in that country of how it impacts their people, right? If you have a regime that is willing to kill people for their political views in the streets and not worry about it and not be concerned, then you've got the ability to put those people in harm's way and not care about how the things impact them. So I think there's a bigger component to that, Tom.
Yeah. So going back to answer your question about Warsh being, the answer is, I don't think anything's going to change until something changes here. And I don't know what's going to change here anytime soon as it relates to the war, because there's not a lot of room. I know there's talk, I think now there's a 40% in the poly market that there could be a rate increase by the first of the year. I just don't see that. I don't see there's any way that that's going to improve a situation. This is, again, as I've said before, not about the fact that we've injected a whole bunch of money into the system like we did during COVID. This is the fact that we have cost increases due to scarcity and issues with, energy and all of those things that are there. So it doesn't give them a lot of a platform to lower rates, but at the same time, I think raising rates doesn't really solve anything either. So I guess to answer your question, which you said, what do you think is going to be different or change? Not a hell of a lot, at least for a while. That's the.
I think I feel like some things got to change here before in this conflict before anything else changes. The idea behind that is, and we've got, the first article that we have this morning in the newsletter, right, is about the UN cutting global growth forecast to 2.5%, and it blames the Middle East crisis, right, full on, straight away, no ifs, ands, or buts. That's the blame to it. And so the component of that is that it's what it's doing with not just fuel again, but it's doing with all of the other commodities that are coming out of that and the growth opportunity. I remember in December and January, you heard people talking about 4 or 5, maybe even 6% GDP increases. And, those things are just being cut dramatically now. And I think, if you read majority of what I'm reading out there is saying if we could get to 3%, it would be great.
Yeah, well, and this isn't the U.S. GDP, by the way. This article,
yeah, correct.
Is global growth.
Yep, global, correct.
And look, the impact that we feel here, right, is our $6.50 a gallon gasoline. For the most part, that is the impact that we feel here. Obviously, in the commercial world and things like that, that high energy cost is impacting there. But think about the rest of the world. I don't know that I don't understand or have appreciation for the impact of what this has done into other parts of the world. Not just Europe, but some of, other countries in Asia and so forth along the way. So there's a lot of other impacts here other than our $6. It's not like we're lining up for fuel like we used to in the 70s or whatever, right? Fuel is at least plentiful. It's expensive, but it's plentiful, right? So it's really interesting, I think, to understand more. And I think this is what this article is starting to go into is, hey, globally, this has got a major impact. It's not just an impact in the U.S. or in the Middle East where the conflict is taking place.
Well, let's tie all this back to, the reason that we're here and the audience that we're here for is wholesale distributors and manufacturers. And it kind of goes to the next article that we have there from Reuters from yesterday, talking about U.S. manufacturing activity rises to a 4-year high in May. And that's a great statement that I really liked in that article. Is it said they call it an inventory whip. It says distributors are moving away from just in time and back to just in case logistics, right? The supplier delivery times, are lengthening and stretching out more. We've had we're going to talk more in a few minutes about tariffs, but you've got the whole tariff component of that, that's been going on as well. And so you've got a huge margin squeeze going on here, and then you've got a supply squeeze. So now you've got this, whipsaw type thing happening where it's saying, okay, well, people are rushing to go boost inventories and because they want to make sure they're going to be able to get things, right? Because the other side of that, we haven't talked about is we've got this fuel issue and the pricing issue. Well, guess what? That goes into every delivery truck. It goes out into every locomotive that is bringing every summer. Let's take it from the start. Actually, it's an increased cost of delivery from a container ship coming from China to the US, and that container gets unloaded onto a semi truck or a rail car. All of those need fuel. And then you move that to the next level to it gets landed to the distributor. Now the distributor's putting it on their trucks, and gas is 20-30% higher than it had been, and more in some places. And you've just got this trickle down effect. So now it's like, okay, I'll load up on my inventories because they may be much more expensive. But then what happens with all of that when all of a sudden we have a free flow of tankers going back through the Hormuz Strait, and we've got a settling in from all of this? Then we've got the whipsaw back the other way.
Yeah, we had this before, right? We had this before prior to some of the tariffs that initiated, right? Kind of the front.
Well, now but it's compounded, right? Because now you have the tariff component and so forth. So yeah, so that's the big challenge with it. So, anyways, let's kind of move through some of these while we're still in the economy section. So, Fed survey shows household view of the U.S. economy is worsening. Before the war with Iran, 8% of adults said their families sometimes or often lacked enough food with that, and that's just growing now. So the sentiment is difficult out there right now. And the sphere of influence that we have here in the show are, for the most part, people that are, well employed, just not employed. And there are some, and I just look at it and it's like, I hate what I pay for gas, but the impact that it has on me is very different than it has on some other people. There's people that, I have a dear friend of mine owns a small company that does shower door and glass closet doors and so forth. And he himself drives 1,000 miles a week, and he's got 8 or 10 trucks out there, right? Well, they'll survive. They'll be fine, right? Maybe they've raised their prices a little bit, but think about, the person that is struggling to get by that has to drive a ton. It's difficult right now.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've had some conversations, and granted, I'm probably not conversing with the lower end of the spectrum, but certainly middle class and upper middle class friends, family, and so forth. And what I hear is, yeah, the prices are a pain, but I'm offsetting that pain by the gains I'm getting in the market and my 401k and all that kind of stuff. Right. When that music stops, which it will at some point, and all of the price increases are not being offset by the stock market and the gains that people are making again in their stock market and 401k, then I think we have a very different situation, right? Now, and I think that's what's keeping us right now from basically going into a recession or a recessionary situation, is people and the consumer is continuing to spend because they're still feeling wealthy with the stock market and everything like that. And it offsets the $6.50 gas or even the other inflationary thing or price increases that we see. But what if the market was down 30% on top of all of that? What do you think the sentiment would be then?
Exactly right.
Versus the other. And think about all the people that are quote unquote retiring or close to retiring and relying on 401ks and investment income and from things like that, right? A 20 to 30% drop in the market, which is not ridiculous, and that very well could happen. That's meaningful, right?
Yep. But can I interject something to go with that, Tom? I just looked up this stat really quick, right? It says 62% of U.S. and this is from a Gallup News poll. It says 62% of U.S. adults are invested in the stock market, but that's in some form, right? So that could be through through a contribution from work. It can be some holding of some sort, but it's a direct ownership. Only 21% of families own individual stocks. So let's look at it from that standpoint. You've got, 38% of the country doesn't have anything invested in that and can't play off of that.
Sure.
So what is that? That's, give or take 100 million people that aren't at all. But then you've got the other component of that. You've got, a third of those people don't have any. I'm sorry, 2/3 of those, that 62%, don't have any individual stocks that they own. So you've got this vast majority of people that, the warehouse guy that just started 2 months ago, or maybe the younger field sales guy that isn't included in your company's ESOP or a 401k or whatever you might have. So there's a big component of people that don't have any of those things. So they're not getting that rise that you described.
No, and that's a whole nother issue, right? Of where you have sort of in the political area, the people that the haves and the not haves. But I'm just talking about, there's a lot of people, obviously, per your statistics there, that judge their wealth factor and their spending based on even their 401k,
Mm-hmm.
right? They get their 401k, statement in the mail, or they watch it on, their stock app or whatever the case may be. And that is the gauge of determining that am I in good shape or not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And I would say the second thing being housing and property.
Yeah. Well, so I agreed. I wouldn't argue any of those things. The thing that I think resonates here in significance is, and comment was made here about, all of these surveys and so forth that are going on, and sentiment and so forth. And I kind of listen sometimes to my wife, who gets frustrated with the cost of things, and the people behind some of this is, the question that really lags there is, what is your view? Would you prefer to have pay a couple of bucks more for a gallon of gas and 75 cents more for a loaf of bread, or the terrorist risk and the nuclear risk that goes with all of those things? So everybody just gets to decide what does all of that mean for them and how they feel about these things. I think we very quickly, and I'm appreciative of the comment that was made, is that we sometimes very quickly go to that component of, my immediate pain and how things are impacting me versus what's best, globally on things.
Well, and I think there's two issues. So yes, the comment here, and Bob was saying, right, is, wait a minute. The reason we, quote unquote, entered into this war,
Mm-hmm.
right, was the risk that Iran brings not only to the Middle East, but potentially the U.S. as well, or a very big risk to the U.S. as well.
Yes.
Right. So we had to handle that situation. Right. Well, for a lot of people, one, they don't believe it. They don't believe there was ever a situation or is a situation. And two, if they believe it, it's certainly not impacting them right now. Right.
Correct.
It doesn't change what they go eat for dinner tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it could impact them in the future, obviously, or their kids or their family and so forth, but it doesn't impact them right now. Whereas the $2 increase in gas does impact us right now.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I agree. We have to kind of zoom out, if you will, and look at things. But I don't think as a culture, we do that very well. We tend to focus on what is in front of us right this second, and that's it. Right.
Well, it's immediate impact to me versus the big picture. Right. So yeah. So let's jump ahead here a little bit and look to, there's an article here that we published about the EU overcomes fierce internal debate to agree on tariff deal with the US. Interesting component, right? So there's a July 4th deadline that was on all of this. Big push back and forth in Europe about their overall view and whether they wanted to do all of this. But the agreement now, and it's been agreed to by the European bloc as a whole through a democratic process to agree to this, which was the image in the article here is the handshake of the head of the EU along with the President Trump, is okay. So now they've said they're prepared for this, and we're willing to now. We've voted, as all of the nations that vote within the European Union, that they've agreed to this 15% tariff cap. So now we've got the margin pressures and all of the things that are agreed to, but then they've got this balance of well, which one of your U.S. tariff statutes are we going to be paying this under? So it's I think there's a big picture component to all of this that says, and it's beyond the EU. And I'm interested in your thoughts on this, and anybody that wants to comment on this. But what's going through my head is, okay, you've got the EU that has said, we, and lack of a better term, capitulate, right? And we will agree, and we want things smooth because we need to be shipping our cars and our electronics and all of the other important things. So we're in a good position there. Let's sign this. Let's get it ready to go. So now that we have that, there's two components that go through my mind, Tom, and I want to hear what you have to say. For the first is, okay, what other nations come along and say, you know what, it's time for us to just do what the EU did. So there's that component, and I guarantee you that Bessent and Secretary Bessent and Lutnick and all of the others from the administration are pushing those other nations now to say, EU is in line, right? You need to come in line similarly. So then now we have that thing that's saying, okay, we've got all of these countries who are acknowledging their willingness to work with us on this. What are the courts going to say, right? Because we've got a whole group of people here. You've got the other, I'll just say the other side of the aisle that's trying to push this through and make these things look illegal and not allow the president to do this. But through the wranglings behind the scenes, he's gotten the entire European Union to say, okay, we're in.
But, and I don't, maybe I don't think this agreement is based on any of these legal reason or means of collecting tariffs. If he's agreed with Europe that we're going to collect 15% tariffs, does that matter what legal channel that is being managed under?
Yeah, so that's the conflict that's built into this article, right? Is like, how does that play out with what we're saying here? And I don't think there's any clarity on that yet, as well as this.
But I don't understand why there would need to be clarity. If I make a deal with you for 15%, who cares what legal statute is being used to drive my arbitrary tariffs?
How do you collect them through CBP if the CBP doesn't have a methodology to go collect those, right? I don't know the full answer to that, and maybe somebody that listens in does. It'd be a great thing to research a little bit further. But that's the rub here now, is that how do you execute against that in this setting?
Yeah, I think what I read in this, I think there's three things going on. And I think it's an intelligent move, by the way, by the EU. One is, hey, let me hedge my bets.
Absolutely.
Right. Let's just get this, 15%. We can live with that. I don't know if that's reciprocal, but it's close to the reciprocal for a lot of the tariffs that exist for the imports that are coming in. Secondly, let's put some predictability back into things, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you look at, wasn't that one of the articles we talked about?
Absolutely. Yeah. Stability it's the instability in all things.
Right. So distributors said their biggest issue was unpredictability.
Mm-hmm.
So let's put some predictability back into it. And I think the third thing is, hey, I want to use this as a tool to get some additional favored nation status with the US and with the administration, right? To me, that would be a smart move, right? To say, look, okay, let's just cut through the noise. We'll pay the 15%. We have some predictability. And now how are you going to help us really go to the, align to our goals by the fact that we did come to the table early and first in doing those things. Now, as far as the infrastructure and administration that's required to collect tariffs, that's already in place. And those are going to have to be in place no matter what, because we're going to be collecting tariffs in one way, shape, or form, regardless of what statute. Remember that the court is, and I'll just finish this, but remember that the court is or blocking the things that were the statutes that the Trump administration used to arbitrarily collect tariffs from different countries.
Yeah.
Right? Those were not agreed upon tariffs with the country. Those were arbitrary, you must pay type of things, and was using those statutes to implement those standards. So again, unless there's more to this than I don't understand, I can't imagine if there's an agreement on it, regardless of the statute changes, gets approved, disapproved, knocked down or whatever.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Tom, because now I'm going to remind everyone that might be listening here that I can hallucinate, as can the tool I'm using right now in front of me, Gemini. But I asked the question related to this. I do a little peek behind the scenes. I have all of our articles up here on Gemini or on Chrome, Google Chrome, and I have Gemini running the side panel, helping me with the breakdown so I can ask questions about the article. So I asked it very quickly because it had given me a breakdown on the article. And I said, how does this CBP collect this if we don't have a current agreement in place? And it said, this hits on the exact structural breakdown. Yes, it needs to start right away. And it relies on a loophole on the executive's broad authority to execute trade agreements. So this is a trade agreement in place to your, and that's right, ties to what you were saying. So it says, how does it collect this? It says the short answer is a presidential proclamation. When the EU deal goes live, the White House will issue an executive presidential proclamation directing the Department of the Treasury and the CBP to modify the harmonized tariff schedule. The blueprint, the CDP does not write tax law, and they are enforcement arm. Once the proclamation lands, they get started with their work. It says the loophole is even if a court rules that the specific statutory mechanism, like Section 122 or IEPA, is invalid, CBP is legally required to follow the active presidential proclamation until a court issues a specific injunction. Now, why? And that was kind of where I was leading earlier, Tom, was like there is now pressure on these courts that if you've got the EU now, the impact of the tariffs on the EU versus, say, China are very different because of the amount of trade that goes on, right? But if you've got a group as large as the European Union that has said we're shaking hands and we've now voted as an organization that we're thumbs up willing to pay this to not risk it being any worse, and now we just have a presidential proclamation. Why would the courts? I mean, what's the point of wasting the time?
You mean wasting the time of
trying to block any of these things?
It doesn't make sense. It wouldn't make sense. Yeah. There's not a lot of driver
for
that. But for the countries where there is an agreement, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So again, I think I could see, like, if I was seen in there in the European Union and one of those people, I could see the argument, right, that they're looking at going, well, man, do we cash in now and hedge our bets and take the 15% and try and figure out how to make this, a positive all the way around so I can improve my favored nation status? Or do I, hold my cards and hope that some of these other things work through and maybe we end up with nothing or little down the road?
Well,
but I do what I said before, the predictability, the hedging, and the favored nation status and the brownie points that they should get for this outweighs the 15% and clearly they decided the same thing.
We have a comment here that talks about, the EU here. It says a smart move to not bite the hand that feeds you. Sure. Right. And we've said this all along in these discussions, Tom, right, is that there will be tariffs, right? It would be silly not to think there are going to be tariffs. And so they will get through at some level. So why not have a workable agreement that's in place, right? And work from there and hope that the president sticks with it and doesn't want to change things again. So let's kind of move off that topic just with the time that we have today. There is, though, I think, an important article as we move into our manufacturing, distribution, and M&A segment. This is an article that is kind of important for people to be watching, not just if you're in the HVAC side of things, but if you're in distribution tied together in general. It's from ACHR News, and it talks about we published an article about this a few weeks ago, right? There's a major lawsuit now, but it's been expanded about price fixing among some of the largest companies in the HVAC space: Carrier, Trane, Daikin, and Rheem. Of course, everybody says it has no merit, but the discussion is that there was a lot going on throughout some of the groups that they work within. The Air Conditioning, Heating, Refrigeration Institute provides some pricing models and puts a lot of market data and information out there. And this whole lawsuit is tied to what's going on with collusion. The concern is, or the lawsuit is tied to this collusion and price fixing that ties amongst that as a whole. And I think the unique piece is that this could happen in any market, whether you're talking about roofing materials or industrial or pipe, valve, and fitting or whatever it might be. And this article goes in and talks a little bit further about what happens when you have some of this industry information that goes across the board, what happens, and then you tied it back. And I think it's important. We have ourselves at LeadSmart, we have quite a few organizations that and buying groups that we're partnered with. Now you sometimes have that buying group or trade group influence where it says, hey, you know what, we're working on pricing models as a large group with a particular group of manufacturers. This I think has the potential to get really sticky, and if it gets legs and really moves a lot further deeper than it is right now, and the courts move ahead with it, it could have some pretty big impact on things.
Yeah, so I have a couple questions here, or whatever, thought questions.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, the article talks about that the HVAC materials had a much higher price increase over the last couple of years compared to other materials, other construction and materials.
Right.
So plumbing materials, electrical, whatever. So for one reason or another, HVAC had a much higher cost increase.
Correct.
I don't know if that's just for the units or for all the ducting and all the other things that go through that. It wasn't clear. It just said HVAC materials on all that. It'd be interesting to understand why, right? That was the case, number one. But I think that's the catalyst for the lawsuit here. Also, the lawsuit was actually filed not through distribution, but through the end user, the contractor.
Correct. The contractor, right?
Right. It was a relatively small contractor, I think, somewhere else in the other way, saying, man, wait a minute, we're getting screwed here. You know,
it's like the guy that has 4 shares of Tesla that sues over Musk's compensation, right?
Right. So, which I think in and of itself is interesting. So I don't know where distributors fall into all of this, right? I don't know if they're, just kind of caught in the middle along the way. But I think there's some interesting data that should come out of this that can be used in the future, I think, to potentially avoid something like this.
Yeah. Yep. Well, it's something that we're going to watch pretty closely here because we have a whole lot of people in this HVAC space that one are LeadSmart customers and 2 listen to the show regularly. So Tom, we're going to kind of skip past that article just because of time today in that section. But let's stop before we move out of manufacturing and distribution segment. And by the way, for those of you listening on the recorded version of our live show here, if you're on Apple or Spotify or wherever it might be, you're not seeing the newsletter that Tom has up on the screen right now. And so if you'd like to get that newsletter that we talk about each week as we continue to reference articles, it's because we have that up on the screen. If you'd like to get a copy of that, just let us know. Send us an email at hello@leadsmarttech.com and we'll get that out to you right away. So we look forward to doing that. But Tom, this was from EY, or the former Ernst & Young, talking about U.S. M&A activity insights in April of 26. And, I get just this plethora of emails each week from different trade organizations and media outlets and press releases from people within the marketplace. Send those in to us that I review. And it's astounding on the distribution side of things, the M&A activity that's going on out there. So why don't we spend a few minutes talking about M&A?
Okay. What would you like to talk about?
Well, first, let's talk about takeaways from this article, right? It talks about corporate deal making surged in February, from February to April of this year. And it talks about a resurgence of mega deals. So this article talked about a lot of different markets. It wasn't just there's retail components to it and other markets. But I was just it's interesting to me to watch the bullishness of the M&A transactions that are going on when we have the stuff that we spent our first 40 minutes of the show talking about, the instability in the marketplaces out there.
So the question is does the M&A activity and the consolidation actually help alleviate or lessen the impact of the things that we just were talking about earlier along the way, right? Is bigger better in that situation? I think that the answer to the reason that a lot of this is happening is there is a belief, whether it's true or not, that bigger is better. Right? And that bigger allows us more opportunity for technological advancement. It kind of, keeps the roller coaster a little flatter, right? Because we have a broader set of opportunity there. There's certainly a lot of money on the sidelines.
Sure.
But all of this, and I think this is one of the points they brought up in this article, not all of this is being driven by private equity. Private equity is part of it, but there's also strategic mergers and corporate mergers and acquisitions taking place as well. So anyway, those are kind of the things I immediately think of when I look at that.
No, I think this is, it talks about scale, right? And consolidation is a big part of this with people and looking to do this. And, there's a lot of organizations that have a lot of cash on the balance sheet and they're able to do this. And maybe I think if you're thinking about, instability in some markets and you've got, dry powder to go put into the market, maybe put it into something that you know really well and you know how to manage and you know the leverage that you'll get out of that. You got to be doing that off your balance sheet though, because money's expensive right now.
Yeah. I mean, I think buying a company is different than like opening a branch, right? Or
Mhm.
so the costs of money may be different in those types of situations, but and you don't always have to pay with cash, right? There's other ways of structuring the deals on top of it. But I think at the end of the day, right, it's kind of like what QXO is doing and so forth is they're trying, they're maintaining that bigger is better.
Mhm.
Now, you could argue that that's true or not, but I believe that is a lot of the catalyst that is driving some of this is, hey, bigger is better. We can weather the storms better and all of that kind of stuff.
Yep. Well, we're seeing it every day and we're seeing it, in the interesting as we've talked about this quite a bit and we can move on from here after this, but I thought the interesting component is that we are seeing this so consistently now. We're seeing the big guys of the Home Depots and the Lowe's that are moving out of retail and coming into wholesale distribution as well with those M&A dollars. Now, that's a little different when you're capitalized from the public markets
Sure.
versus running things off of your balance sheet. But
Yes.
anyways, it's good to see that activity. I don't, I have a question in my mind that if we look back at some of the mergers going on from mid-sized regional distributors getting gobbled up by, I'll say mid-sized local distributors getting gobbled up by mid-sized and national distributors. I wonder if, one, I'd love to read some research if it was out there that looked back, and I'll just use building trades, right? Whether it's roofing or siding or lumber tied to electrical and pipe, valve, and fitting and HVAC. Just put 5 or 7 of those markets into a bucket. I'd love to look at the research to say, and I doubt that this exists, but to be able to look at the last 10 years of those terms, maybe 20 years of those types of transactions, and watch the ecosystem that comes out of that. One is, were they able to digest it, and make it profitable? And really, what did it do to the overall balance sheet of the business that was the acquirer? And then 2, how many new companies actually were born out of that because you had executives that either weren't brought over in the transition or decided didn't like the transition and went out on their own. I mean, if you could see the ecosystem that one were they able to digest it, and 2, what came out of it into a new ecosystem would be some amazing research.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's not a black and white thing. That's for sure.
So you do that study when you retire and I'll read it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. I'll get on that. When am I
Because
retired?
I'm not nearly interested enough to go try and figure it out, but I do think it would be unique to see. So
my 401k is not in a place for me to retire. So
okay. Maybe so. And if I went out and sold more software, would it be beneficial?
that would help my 401k. Yeah.
Very good. At least your stock holdings in one particular company that sponsors this show. So hey, let's roll into our AI and our technology segment here and latest news and updates and tools in AI. So this was the first time ever we had a president, and it only makes sense because of where we're at with AI, where we had a AI and crypto czar. So this administration has David Sachs, the famed Silicon Valley investor, although now living in Texas to avoid the pending California billionaire tax. But that's a whole nother story. But Tom, are you going to flee California, do you think, at some point?
Oh, there's hope for California, I think. I think we might actually get some
So
Hopefully
let's.
California
I'm
have
gonna
these
hit.
upcoming elections.
I'm gonna hit pause. Do you Tom and I, as those of you listening, born and raised, both of us in Long Beach, California, where we met each other in kindergarten, and we've been lifelong friends, and now run a company together and have our podcast that we do here weekly. And where are we at? 191 today, so 9 weeks from our 200th show. But both lifelong Californians, we both love it here, but neither one of us like our taxes. And there are multiple people within the race for California governor who are talking about a major tax reduction. What was it, Tom? I think they're saying is that for under
No state tax for $100,000 or less. I don't know if that's per couple or per individual, and a flat 7.5% tax for anything above $100,000.
and to me that is, and what's interesting is it was the leading Republican candidate, Steve Hilton, who brought that up. And then now I believe multiple Democrats have jumped on board with that as well, which is unique to see. So
I think also there's a side, we were really going off track, but the other thing that I think is positive is that the way that they believe that will get funded is by cleaning up some of the waste, fraud, and abuse that we have in the state and the wasted money that we have here. So if we clean up that, right, we can, and we put in a more, a much better tax structure, right? We still can, have plenty of money to fund the budget. So it's kind of a 2-for-1, right? It's like, hey, right now, Kevin, you and I are paying for the waste, fraud, and abuse that's going on
exactly right
state, right? So we don't want to pay for that anymore, and we don't want it anymore. So it's kind of a double strategy, if you will, or a double narrative that's being used in the race. I don't know if you noticed, but there's almost, I think I counted 38 candidates running for governor for California in the primary in June.
I've been out of the People's Republic of California for a few days now, so I haven't heard anything about any of this.
Tennessee, yeah, they just are moving to Tennessee, or
that's right. It's pretty. Listen, there is it's just booming in all of the states with minimal or no income tax.
Sure.
And this, I think what part of this proposed billionaire tax that has come up has been tied to the idea of the issue is people are getting ready to run out of the state. And the core behind that is, all right, I'm going to make my last statement on this topic, and we'll get back to AI executive order being signed or not signed, is the biggest component of this, I think right now, is where does that, because this, what basically what's out there as that may make it to the ballot is an addendum of an additional tax for billionaires of, was it 5%?
Yeah, something like that. An asset tax, though.
And so basically telling somebody
tax is an asset tax.
Really what it is piracy, because that money has already been taxed, right? So that's the big claim. So now you've got lots of billionaires leaving the state fully right now. So now we lose any tax from those people in the state of California at that setting. And the big question is, well, if they did it on a billionaire's tax, well, why not do it on somebody that has 100 million and add that, and then bring that down to anybody, right? So I think this proposal for this lower tax is to say, well, you know what, with other tax loopholes, and it's 7.5%, and I can probably, bring my overall tax rate down to something that's manageable, and people will either be coming to California, or be willing to stay. So anyways, I took us down that path. I apologize. The reason we were talking about that is Trump postpones his executive order signing about not liking certain aspects of the AI initiative that was highly sought after, and bringing more innovation and so forth to us. Tom, do you have any particular comments on this right now?
I mean, there's not a lot of details on what he didn't like. The one thing that I'm a little, again, I don't know a lot about it, but from what I understand, part of that order would allow the U.S. to evaluate new models for security and other things like that. Again, I'm not a super big fan of that approach. But again, I don't know the details, so it's hard to comment because I don't know the details.
Okay.
There was no real time for, okay, when we would, look at this again. I think it was supposed to be yesterday that was supposed to be signed, and there were just things that he wasn't happy about. So
Yep.
that's all we know.
Well, what's interesting is watching what this needs to get through to curb the states from doing
Sure.
silly things, right?
Sure.
And so that's the big push of getting this through,
Sure.
and and driving less regulation at a local level on this, right? And it's interesting because if you think about it from distribution standpoint and manufacturing standpoint, just going back to the event I was at earlier this week with the folks at Infor, there in Nashville, is big room of companies like ours with AI related products that were there, and everybody's touting that. Well, you've got now people in distribution looking at AI tools to help them in with pricing, AI to help them with purchasing, AI to help them with customer intelligence and understanding what's going on with their customers better, and tools that we have at our company at LeadSmart. AI. Well, if you live, let's just use Colorado, that's wanting to put their own regulations in place, right? We have our great friends. In fact, I was meeting with some of their people earlier this week at the event that I was at. We have a great HVAC customer in Colorado, right? That's our friends at Hercules Industries there, and their AI tools, in theory, could be impacted of what they're able to use. What other than what and a great example with that is they're in multiple states, in Kansas and Utah and Colorado and other states in between. You could be in a position, if the states are allowed to put these regulations in, that you could buy technology that you could use in some of your locations, but not others, because you could have companies that said, I'm not going to, subscribe to what, X state or X region is deciding, or X province in Canada that decides on something. So this is probably more important than people realize when you think about this.
Yeah, no, it's going to be unenforceable mess, right? With all this state stuff. And again, I wish I understood more what was holistically going to be included in this executive order. Hopefully we'll find out soon, and this doesn't drag out a whole lot longer. So,
yep. Good. All right. You want to pick another article or two in this segment that we can chat about briefly, and then we'll kind of move ahead?
Let's go to this last article. I mean, there's some good stuff here, but this was from Distribution Strategy. And
AI divide.
Yeah, AI divide. And so looks like they've been doing some research and so forth. But one of the comments they made in there, which I thought it was a little more subtle than it even needed to be, right? A lot of AI spend up in the distribution world, and I believe this to be true because I've seen it, has been productivity and efficiency, right? So if I'm getting an AI tool that helps take my, an order that came in on a piece of drywall and turn that into something that can go into my ERP system and be processed, right? That's efficiency and productivity. And what they're saying in here is, while that's fine, what we're entering into in this kind of next chapter of things is, how do you create a platform to really facilitate not just productivity and efficiency, but doing things that you never were able to do before in the business, right? So it's not just taking and doing something that you're already doing and making it better and more efficient and more productive, but how do you go to a whole nother level? And the only way you do that, which we've talked about over and over, is starting with that platform. And the reason being is because the platform gives you the foundation of the data aggregation, the security, the governance, the workflow infrastructure, all of those things you need if you're going to start building agentic applications that are going to really drastically move the needle versus something that's just improving your productivity or efficiency in the business. So they mention that. They don't go any further with it. They mention that. I don't know if that's going to be part of their best practice series that they have coming up and so forth. But I do agree with that 100%, is the next chapter here. And we've talked about platforms as platforms versus product, but more than ever, I have seen without the platform, you're just kind of screwed. And you're
hang on a second. Expand on that. I think that's really important.
Because in order to really use AI and agentic AI
Mm-hmm.
to move the needle, right? You can't be siloed. And it's not just data. You can't have your workflow siloed. You
Mm-hmm.
can't have your data siloed. You can't have your security siloed. You can't have your governance siloed. You have to have a common centralized framework for this, or it just does not work, right? And so the platform is what gives you the foundation, whether it's data, workflow, governance,
Mm-hmm.
security, even agentic, management of the agents and how they're running and all of those things. Without that, it's really impossible to build that more holistic, next level AI strategy. You just can't shove in a bunch of individual stuff and then figure I'll come back later and patch that all back together.
So I had this was a great part of the discussions I had with both Rick Ryder and Kevin Samuelson at the meetings I was at with them this week with Infor in Nashville. And we talked about this a ton, right? Is the risk that's out there right now, and to help me if I'm not kind of refining a little bit of what you were saying there. The risk right now is we've lived in a world where we have just been buying software after software after software within an organization, and marketing buys some software, and operations buys some software, and purchasing and finance buys some software, and the executives want a couple of pieces of software. We have this fragmented data across an organization that is never talking to each other. In fact, once in a while, somebody wants to do an audit and look at it and say, why do we own all of this software out there? Right. And none of that is talking. And that problem gets magnified in a world with AI, because now what you're looking at in that setting is I've bought all of these point solution products, right? And now I have fragmented AI, which could be, especially if you start getting hallucinations in that, right? It's not looking at a holistic view of the business. It's looking at a singular view of what it does within the business. And everybody says that they can connect to an ERP system, but what else can you do beyond that with the other software? The challenge, Tom, and I'm interested in your thoughts on this, and it's, again, a lengthy discussion about this in the event I was at earlier this week, is that everybody says they're a platform.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody says they're a platform. And that, so, and I'm looking at it out there in the marketplace, right? And it's a really interesting time. We should probably think about, expanding up sponsorship opportunities for this show, because Silicon Valley is minting technology companies right now. They're just pumping out day in and day out of people that are looking. They oftentimes build a solution with AI and say, what market can we apply this to? And we have in particular, there's a couple of different incubators. I was talking to Justin Johnson with Motivate about this on Wednesday in Nashville. And these, everybody's showing up with these new tools, and everybody wants to use the word platform because it's kind of a buzzword. But the reality is all they are is another point product that helps in this application of the business, and they remain fragmented.
Right. So I think there's two things. One, we need to start using the word enterprise platform versus platform, right? I can have a point product platform, and I'm sure there's millions of those out there. If anyone's listening and they want to know what goes into a platform, direct message or send us a message, and we can send us. We did a white paper recently.
A white paper on it. Yep.
Right. And on what is truly a platform that is foundationally right. What is the scale and scope of a platform that really needs to go in place to be able to support a longer term AI strategy, right, in the business? And look, I wouldn't expect people to implement all the things that you can do with the platform overnight, but the foundation has to go in. It's just like, if you're going to build a house, right? You got to put in the foundation, you got to put in the infrastructure and all of that so that you can, that your plumbing and your water connects to one room to the other, or to one bathroom to the other. And all of that kind of stuff is the same sort of thing we need to be thinking about here. And I had a call yesterday with an executive at Salesforce. Salesforce has recognized that the way they sell, the way they've historically sold, which is like Sales Cloud and Service Cloud and all of that, does not make sense anymore. what they need to do is the way to sell is how do you incorporate the platform into the organization and then build things on top of the platform first. And then we can start talking about sales and service and all of those things.
Right.
So it's not just the fact that you have a platform, but how do you incorporate it into the business effectively? And do you have the right tools for doing that and the right pieces of that, which is what we talk about in the white paper.
Yeah.
And I believe that's what they're touching on here in this article, going full circle.
Well, right. We've got people now that are dipping their toes in the water and doing, small projects, and that they're looking at the idea of trials and pilots and so forth. Well, now you're getting some results from some of these pilots, and now you need to set the long-term strategy that, am I going to have an agentic based company, or am I just going to continue down the path that we've kind of been going and doing one-off solutions? As a side note, it's probably good to reference why you were on the phone yesterday with a Salesforce executive. Is the company that you and I run, LeadSmart Technologies, is a global strategic OEM partner of Salesforce, and we're their partner in wholesale distribution and manufacturing, where we've built our solutions within LeadSmart, which is as we define it, as an enterprise growth platform to power our solution, which is why you were doing that call. It's a wonderful partnership, because what it does is it gets wholesale distributors and manufacturers that we work with access to the security layers and that true agentic future, right, that Salesforce has, without some of the infrastructure needs you would need internally to work with an organization as large as our friends at Salesforce. But I think
Salesforce has invested literally billions of dollars into the platform, right?
But the company on it,
right? But the platform, the platform isn't new. The platform has been, invested in for many, many years, right? And it's battle tested and so forth. So no one really knew probably that the payoff that would come from that, but that has turned out to be I think a real big strategic advantage, is all the effort and infrastructure that has gone into the cloud platform that's there.
Yeah. So as a simple point, and we'd love to share the white paper that was mentioned before we go off this topic completely, is, one of the terms that was used in one of the conversations that I was in the other day was extendability and extensibility. Yep. And so, Tom, I think you used a really good example in your comment about building a house, right? When people build a house, typically from the ground up versus buying an existing house, they're typically looking at, am I buying something that can be expanded and grown if I want to add on, right? It's very easy to do the wiring in your house in a way that says, I could add a second story in a couple of years and I've already got the wiring in place for that. I could decide to build an ADU and I have the plumbing infrastructure in place for those types of things. And that's what we're really kind of talking about here. I tell people all the time, if you want to just look at it from a simple component of whether you're working with a platform or not, is ask your software vendor what access you have to at least some level of code to continue to grow and manipulate that for the needs of your business, without waiting for your software vendor to add a feature that you want. Right now, every distributor is not going to, or every manufacturer doesn't have the people or the resources to go do that. But if you want to be looking at where your future should be, and one of the values of a platform is that you can continue to extend that out beyond its initial use.
Yes. And I'll give you an example that I'm seeing more of, that you would be, how do these tie together? The biggest request that we're
getting, your house was, and plumbing thing was perfect.
Right.
So bring on more of those.
I'll give you a real world example of that in the technology. One of the biggest things we're getting requests for from our customers right now with our platform is, I want to add an expense reporting capability on this.
Yeah.
For their sales team, right? Sales guy takes a guy out to lunch or to the ball game or whatever. They want to build that on our platform. Now you go, why would they want to build an expense?
Great example.
And isn't that a point product? Well, no, not necessarily. So we already have the infrastructure of all the sales teams. We know we have all the customer information, what they're doing on all of those things. Now they can track back and incorporate into either AI reporting or analytics, which customers are they spending the most money on? Which customers should they be spending more money on that they're not? right, from an expense perspective, right? Now all of a sudden, this expense tool that you would go buy as a point product and run it as a thing there is incorporated into the platform and into the overall infrastructure. And now this data and workflows and everything else that's incorporated in there makes a lot more sense.
So because they're on a platform, they're looking at ERP data, they're looking at expense data in this case, because they extended things out to expenses. They're looking at marketing data. What events is that customer coming to? What promotions are they responding to? They could expand that out into analyzing data from their e-commerce system and other connected systems. And now they get that full holistic view that says not just did finance get a expense report from Joe Smith, Joe's boss and Joe can look at that and go, wait a minute, you know what? We've got a customer that we've not spent any money with expenses that is driving exponentially more business than where we're spending over here.
Well, and even in by the fact that we have ERP data billed to and shipped to locations, right? Now that expense can be tied to a location potentially that's again already tied back to the ERP. So
Right.
now I don't have a separate database over here tracking what are the companies that I'm doing expenses with. I mean, you just start to think about it. It sounds like a stupid example, but the carry through on that sort of piece is example of why the future of all of this is platform centricity, right? And that's an example of being extensible, is being able to put those things together. So anyway, that's a lot but this, going back to the article that we were discussing, this isn't just me saying this or you saying this. This is what they were saying, as well as there's starting to be some shift from the point productivity tools, efficiency tools into let's look at the platform first and then work from there.
So I dipped my toes in the water. I dipped my toes in the water, had some early success with a couple of things, and now it's time to get real and put up my big boy pants.
Right. And if your product can't, if you're calling your product a platform and you can't build an expense management application on it, you're not a platform. Just leave it at that. There's your litmus test.
There you go. Yep. That's great. It's a great example. Great. Well done. So expenses and plumbing were your analogies to platform.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, good. Well, that was so good. I'm going to let you pick the next article to discuss.
Well, let's just wrap up here.
There's some cool videos about some robots doing some
there
neat
are
stuff
some good robot stuff in here.
Yep. So we have a whole segment in the newsletter about robotics and cybersecurity and technology. So cool kind of video in there that, and this is interesting, right? Because this one slaps in the face a little bit about the blue collar jobs and the trade type jobs not being replaced. Now, I think you still got somebody that needs to be able to manage and oversee all of this, but there's a video. We have a video of a robot changing a tire faster than a mechanic could ever do it. Now, you probably need in that auto shop, or tire shop, you need fewer people if you've got robots running, but you'd still need people there as well. So, but we're just going to see more and more of this humanoid robot, right? Can't wait for the one here at the Brown household.
Yeah, it's coming.
Are you getting ready to pull that video up? Is that what you're doing?
No.
I see those pauses and your eyes moving around your screen. And
no, I was going to try and see if I could do it, but it would have been.
It's a little hard to do. I should have thought about that ahead of time. But again, if you don't get our newsletter, get that, have us send that to you, and you can see that link, and you can also see that newsletter on LinkedIn. But it's also from techspot.com. So it's pretty impressive, but it's not a humanoid robot. It's a robotic system, but it's pretty neat to see. But I think we're going to see more and more of this. And this is going to tie into, I just started thinking about warehouse management. It's a little bit harder when you look at the traditional robots in a warehouse right now. But when we get humanoid robots that are in warehouses as well, it can basically be tying right into your ERP system. And I mean, even at that point is, could see write data from your CRM even about a damaged shipment, and could go look at other packages because it saw that right off the bat, right? I mean, imagine that setting that you've got a robot that gets a trigger from an agent. Its agent is talking to the CRM agent, and the CRM agent has data from something that a customer service person put in about a damaged pallet of water heaters or whatever it might be. And that robot takes that trigger from that agent and wanders down a row of aisles and does a visual scan with its camera, because it knows what the configuration of those are supposed to be and can see if there's any more damaged. Did it happen here? Did it happen somewhere else? So it's pretty astounding. All right, let's peg a couple of more articles from a couple of other sections, maybe sales and marketing. The one that I wanted to hit on, Tom, that I have is in our sales, marketing, e-commerce segment. Is this is a unique thing that kind of to hit on briefly here. The article there about Grainger outperforming industry due to e-commerce. Did you get a chance to review that one?
I looked at it. I didn't do a deep dive into it, but I saw it.
Yeah. So, the interesting thing that I'll just kind of share with this on you, is that they've got some pretty significant success on margin in Q1 in 26. And a big part of that is going to be tied back to Grainger as well as Fastenal and some other very large manufacturers. Grainger has a few, I don't know, when I was doing some work with them in the early 2010s, they had 200 or 300 people in China, where they had a whole operation where they were doing their own private label operation. They had people overseeing all of that. They were the importer of record. And so now, because their private label side of things is so high, even with the tariffs that were going, their margins are extremely high on that, but they're going to get the tariff money back because they're the importer of record, because of how strong their private label brands are. So that was kind of a hidden gem within this article about Grainger's e-commerce performance. So not only are they, their margins
are they going to pass the refunds along?
Didn't say anything about that, and you know my thoughts on all of that.
Yeah.
So but it was an interesting article about, and it's if you take a step back, right? And I guess this is what comes from having been in distribution on my end for 35, probably closer to 40 years now, is watching the evolution of these types of things into the marketplace and how they've come about. Really, is the Grainger is the reason that there is Amazon Business. Amazon Business, right when they were starting, 10, probably close to 10 years ago now, was very straightforward and clear that they knew that Grainger, because of Grainger's public filings as a publicly traded company, were doing, I think it was at the time, $3 billion a year, if I remember the stats right, in e-commerce. And Amazon was like, we can do that and we can do it better. And here we are with Amazon Business today. All right, Tom, you pick the next one. We'll do one more and we'll head on our way for the day.
The only other article that I kind of stood out to me is this first one here in sales, marketing, and e-commerce. Customer service wins loyalty, but businesses are missing the mark.
Okay.
And obviously this was more consumer centric, right? The article was based around consumer customer service. But,
there's a gray area, right? We're moving out of that world where it matters whether you're retail or wholesale.
No, I agree. I think our expectations, right, are similar. Whether I'm doing something as a consumer or in a B2B world, my expectations are similar.
Yep.
And they were saying in there that as a consumer, if you get a bad customer experience, you'll drop that brand and move immediately to find something else. It's not 3 strikes you're out; it's 1 strike you're out.
Yep.
Along the way, that may be not quite as drastic in the business world, but I can see that even that first strike can really put a bad taste and now puts from a business perspective, you're now backpedaling, right, in a lot of situations.
Yep.
There. So, this kind of goes back to platform. And to me, we see a lot of people who are evaluating companies, right? Evaluating us, they're evaluating other companies. And I stressed to them, I said, before you start even looking at the product, right? What is the company's reputation as it relates to being a partner, the customer service, right? The support, the expertise, all of the things that quote unquote would make up service in a B2B world. To me, in this today and age, and I think you may have run into this with your meetings with Infor, right? You said they deployed 100 forward deployed engineers.
Yeah.
Into the business, right, to help customers more on what they're doing. I think that the customer service and that aspect of it, as far as evaluation, becomes even if not more important, as important as the technology and product itself. Because you can have the greatest piece of technology in the world, but if you have crappy support,
Right.
crappy customer service,
Hmm.
crappy culture, all of those things, you're not going to get what you're looking for out of that
Hmm.
technology. So I thought this was an interesting, and I agree with you, is that the consumer expectations every day carry more and more over into the business expectation.
Yeah. Yep. I think that's absolutely the case. And it just, as we think about the AI component of this, and we should probably really reference what that is. It's mostly turning into bots, right? And this was talking about 2/3 of people that are looking at and using those are struggling and having challenges with them. And I think about it within our organization, right? Everybody is, you've got huge technology companies out there that are laying off huge components of their workforce because of wanting to just have agents now, but really most of that is bots still that are taking over and trying to solve problems. I am so fed up with getting dropped into a bot that is saying it understands a small fraction of my question. Now this is just going to get better and better and better, and we will get to a place where we would rather talk to an agent than or a bot than
I've had
than
a few of those recently. I've had a few really good experiences
I've
with
had a
that.
couple that are good, but for
Right.
the vast majority of them are still horrible. And the challenge for me as a consumer, and I think about this, and we've talked about it as we relate to our support network at LeadSmart, is the idea of this that's like there is so much opportunity to frustrate somebody that is already frustrated,
Sure.
right? They're already when they're using that 9 times out of 10, they already have an issue. And so why, make that or magnify the problem that comes with that? Because when I try and, it's when I was buying my meta glasses and trying to deal with support on just shipping times on it. It was like you go into this, infinite loop of back and did I answer your question? Oh, well, try again. And no, just get me to a live chat. I don't even want to talk to somebody. Just get me somebody to chat with that is a human. And so I think we've got a ways to go on all of this. I certainly know that we have a ways to go on it before we would ever implement something like that at LeadSmart.
No, but there are some really, and I don't know
There
what
are
they
good
do, but
ones.
there are some very good,
Hmm.
I've found some very good AI related, even chatbots
Hmm.
that answered my question very, very specifically, very accurately, much like you would if you went to Claude or whatever and
Hmm.
asked something, it's more generalized,
Right.
and it solved what I needed in 10 seconds.
Hmm.
Now, could that have been an audio call? Sure. I guess in theory,
Hmm.
the same experience could be on audio as well. So I think we're moving in the right direction, but many, many companies are still on old school chat bots
Right.
and auto whatever,
Yep.
auto support, which are a mess. I agree. So
Yeah. Okay. You want to wind it down?
let's wind it down.
All right. Well, listen again. I'm sure appreciative of everybody that spent a portion of your day with us today, whether you got 20 minutes of our hour and 20-minute chat here, or you got the whole thing or 5 minutes of it. We appreciate the time that you gave us. Again, I'm Kevin Brown. This is Tom Burton. We do this every week. We look forward to the series of guests that we have coming up. We had Mark Gillum that was with um, Enable that's coming on the show soon. We've got Dirk Beveridge coming back with us. We've got 5 or 6 guests lined up for the next 45 days or so.
Jermaine next week.
I didn't look who's next week, but that could be very likely so. And Taylor is with ITR Economics and an economist and fun to have on the show. So we'll get that promoted. I didn't look again this morning. Maybe you can check real quick with that, Tom. We've got quite a few people coming, and then we've got to get it figured out, my friend, what we're doing for the 200th episode, because it's a big deal, right? Was it something like less than like 96% or something like that? A podcast never get to 10 episodes. And I'm not sure if we're doing something really good here. We're just two idiots to go spend a bunch of time together, but people seem to like what we're doing. So what we didn't do when we started the show was tell you how we get here each week. There's a significant cost that goes into producing and organizing this show. So we've got people on the front end of it that are organizing it and promoting and getting that done. And we've got a whole production team that's on the back end that takes this live broadcast and turns it into podcast format and gets it out to, I think we're on like 30 plus podcast formats now. And we've got people in averaging 6 to 8 different countries every week that are listening in as well. And that takes a lot of effort. And the company that Tom and I work for are currently the sole sponsor and partner of our show. And we're grateful for that because we couldn't do it otherwise. So our company, Lead Smart Technologies, is developed what we describe as an enterprise growth platform. And you heard us talking a little bit today about what a platform really is and what it is not, and how important it is for the future. And we take that fragmented and siloed data from across your business, from whether it's a data lake where you have structured and unstructured data in your marketing automation tools, your e-commerce tools, certainly your ERP. We bring all that together in a single platform where we can use both AI and other advanced technologies to really help understand not only just what's happening at your customer, but what's happening with your teams, your branches, and across your entire business. So we appreciate the sponsorship that we have there. We would love it if your company is looking to understand more about platforms, getting your agentic future in place, and how you're going to really wrangle AI to maximize and execute against your business growth goals. Doing more with less, ideally, in that setting. We would love nothing more than to talk to you. So again, we appreciate everybody being with us. One final comment from our dear friend Paul Kennedy. We're looking forward to having Paul back with us soon. Watch for the phone call from me, Tom. Paul, we're gonna wrangle you back in here. We're grateful for the people that spend time with us each week. If you're listening again on whichever platform, if you're on LinkedIn, please hit the follow button for Lead Smart, as well as the podcast itself. If you're on any of the recorded podcast platforms, Apple, Spotify, please click the subscribe button and leave us a review. Same thing on YouTube. Nothing better to drive those algorithms to put us in front of other people and get the same benefit to them. So holiday weekend, we're thankful for a Monday off, and we wish everybody a wonderful holiday weekend. Tom, what are you going to do Monday? Load data or something?
Maybe it'd be a data-free day. I don't know. We'll see.
Good. You deserve to go have a little bit of fun. So
all right,
I'm going to try and find a little bit of time at the beach on Monday is my goal, or at least some time in the sun. So we'll wish everybody a wonderful weekend. We appreciate you joining us each week. So we wish you a good time. Be safe, be kind, do good things.